Yeah.
That's how he made his money, business and real estate. And you guys
Yeah.
are literally.
And that's when
Talk to
Craig from Money Ripples, your partner there at Money Ripples, he's our consultant, is what we call him. Craig's like, I got an idea for you. I knew the value of getting out of debt, as did Tracy. And so part of this pattern, we went from.
Chris Miles was able to retire twice by the time he was 39 years old. But he's not content to just enjoy his own financial freedom and peace of mind. Chris wants you to have your own ripple effect so you can live free today. He's not the financial advisor you expected. He's the anti-financial advisor you deserve. He's jumping behind the mic right now, ready to make waves. Here's Chris Miles.
Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Welcome to the show. It's for you, those who want to be work optional. You want to work because you want to, not because you have to. You want to have enough passive income so you can live that life of freedom, doing what you love with those you love. And most importantly, guys, it's not just about getting rich. You want to live a rich life because as you're blessed financially, you now have a greater capacity to bless the lives of those around you. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for allowing me to create the ripple effect through you. As a reminder, if you haven't done so already, you can go and subscribe, not just the Money Ripples page, but we got another Money Ripples channel as well. I said Money Ripples page. I meant Money Ripples channel. We got that YouTube channel, but we have a second one as well. If you want to get more shorts and even some other little tidbits and bonus type of education, we've got that as well on our Money Ripples podcast channel. So check that out now. Okay, guys. So I'm bringing on some guests here that are special VIP clients that we've been working with. And the thing I love about this, these are like my favorite episodes because I never know what they're going to say, right? You know, just so you know, I didn't pay them to be here. You know, just make that disclaimer. But I definitely am curious to see like what they've learned because just like you, they were listening to this podcast. And so I know many of you guys are like, okay, bridge the gap. Chris, yeah, you're free, but what about the in-between part? Like what happens and how does this look for me? That's kind of what I want to get into today and really share your experience, this experience here with really these two wonderful people in, I think it's Asheville, North Carolina, or pretty darn close. We know it's in between North and South Carolina. But we got Nick and Tracy Adolf here with us today. So, hey, thanks for joining us today, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
You bet. Now, I was saying Asheville, but I know you're not exactly in Asheville right now, correct?
Yeah, we're a little further away from Asheville, but most people don't know a little town by the name of Lake Toxaway. So it's kind of hidden in the Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, and yeah, nice little. I call it a retirement community almost.
And watch, there's gonna be somebody that's like, "That's where I live." You know, they put a comment there. So,
and I'm a long way from retiring.
Well, tell us more about your story because I know you guys have a pretty interesting journey. You guys were kind of raised in that, you know, that traditional mentality around saving and investing and whatnot. But tell us kind of about that and how you guys even came together too.
Is this a 4-hour podcast?
I know. You're opening a big can of worms.
I mean, leave out the dirty bedroom details, of course. You can leave those out, but.
Well, that's a great question. And I think the history, and everybody's got a unique story. I think the history is what's important for, you know, people to relate with in their own journey, because I think it's pretty similar to what a lot of people, well, certainly in America, they experience. So I was raised in a small town in Michigan. My dad worked for General Motors, worked in a factory, ended up after high school going into the military, and eventually went to school at the University of Michigan, got my nursing degree, and worked clinically as a nurse for about 15 years in a number of different roles. And then the last 15 years, I've been in medical device sales and related work in the medical device field. So that's kind of my little story. How about you?
Yeah, so while he was doing all that, I was going to high school. No, just he's not that much older than me, but I was in school for a lot of that. But then how we met was actually he ended up coming to my parents' church. My dad was a pastor. And so when he was going to college, living at home with his parents, was required to go to church if he was home. So that's how we met.
Yeah.
We dated for a couple of years, and then we went our separate ways.
Yeah, we dated for 2 years.
Yeah, we were gonna get married, and wow. I was like, "Yep, I'll see you later. We're all done with the God thing." So we went our separate ways, and he got married, and I got married, and we both had 2 kids, and we're both married for 8 years. And I was a stay-at-home mom during that time frame. And then my husband left and his wife left, and he somehow talked to my brother. Maybe.
I saw your brother, and he's like, "Hey, Tracy's living over here in the Bradbury Apartments." And I was like, "What?"
Going through a divorce. And so he called me, and
I had been divorced for 3 years. I never went on a single date for 3 years. I actually didn't have any interest in dating, but then I heard that Tracy was in the market, so I called her. And we started talking, and it wasn't too long after that. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to marry her." So anyway, we've been married now, going on this September will be 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I continue to be a stay-at-home mom. I had a couple of jobs here and there, but then the kids decided, actually, they really decided they wanted to be homeschooled. We did not decide that. They came and gave us a presentation of the pros and cons of homeschooling versus public school. So we thought, okay, I guess there's something to this. So,
and there's a little backstory to that too, because the kids had neighbors in the community that we were in that were homeschooled. And they would, after school, go play and just build a friendship with those kids. And those kids were done with school at noon, 1 o'clock. And of course, that's not what our kids were experiencing. And then they had a school lockdown for a bomb threat. And that was kind of the final straw, because nobody could get in, nobody could get out. It's a big stressful thing for the community. And it was shortly thereafter that the kids were like, "We want to do what those kids are doing." So they actually took it upon themselves and built a PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint presentation.
They presented all the reasons that we should do homeschooling. So anyway, long story made short, we ended up doing that, and Tracy did the homeschooling for a long time.
So to kind of add to that, to go back to kind of part of our financial journey, I think when you experience a divorce, and I would imagine the majority of people experience this in a divorce, everything gets split down the middle, and now you're, kind of starting over per se. And so we at 30 and 36 found ourselves now back at square one, and having to start the whole, saving again, the normal financial advisor advice. Just put it in the stock market. And it was a couple of years ago that we had a conversation with a gentleman at Fidelity, and was telling him our goals. And I think that's kind of started our journey to try to phase into a different route. And he said,
what was it? What was it that kind of inspired you there? Was it something that he has said, or is it something you were already thinking about before?
Well, if I can interject on this, because through my company, we have a financial advisor through Fidelity that's free to the employees. And we sat down and ran through our numbers and our goals, and they basically show your screen and projections and what you need to do. And I didn't like the answers he gave. I just thought, I want a better answer than that. So I went to another financial advisor, and then another financial advisor, and they all looked, even though they're different companies, they all look like cookie cutter,
same chart,
same stuff. And it was the same essential message. And I said, this isn't good enough for me. I don't mean that in a prideful way. It just, I mean that in that it wasn't satisfying to me as far as what I thought was possible. And so eventually, jumping forward, we're married for I don't know how many years before we actually moved from Michigan to North Carolina in like 2015. And we found a piece of property. We were trying to buy a house, but just couldn't find anything that fit our needs. We found a piece of property, essentially for sale by owner. We became good friends with the people that sold it to us, and then they actually helped us build a home. And I think seven years later, that property at 10 acres we had developed into, we'd cleared all the land and built a new home, and it had a beautiful view and then a horse pasture and stream, and it was a really cool spot, and we loved it there. It's very quiet, very private, very isolated, and yet
we were in debt.
We were in debt. We had 360,000, something like that, in debt, which we'd been paying down our mortgage. I think we paid it down
it started at 410.
410, So we paid it down a good amount, over that 7-year period. But we just weren't on target to hit our goals. So that was when we sat down, and we had one child still living at home. The other three had either joined the military or moved. And we're like, should we sell? And so we talked about it and what that looked like, because we had the house just dialed in perfectly. We loved it. And we were like, yeah, this is where we're going to just live forever. But then we decided to make a tough call, a big decision, and we split the property in two, and we sold the two different pieces, and that changed our financial projections immensely.
Yeah. And it was at that point, I think, that we decided that we wanted to be good stewards of what we felt like was a God gift for us. Because I think in looking at having, a couple with 4 children, 1 income, and having to kind of basically start over at 36, and all that we were given, we feel like God was blessing us greatly. And so in the sale, we were like, okay, we don't want to then frivolously waste all of this money that he has blessed us with. We want to now become good stewards of this. So what do we do with it? And we knew that just dumping it into the market, we're like, we don't want to do that, because we've seen the market for the last, 15 years that we've been trying to save. That's not going to work.
You lose quick and you regain that too slow.
Yeah.
I mean, we made it back. We've done well. Our investments have done pretty well in the 401k, but not at the pace that we need to hit our goals. So
what kind of goals were you going for? Maybe whether it's then versus now, what kind of goals were you trying to achieve?
There's a unrealistic, really, for me, expectation to try to compete with what my dad was able to do, because he worked in General Motors from the time he was 18 and he retired at 48, and he was debt free and wealthy, and he's been now, I think, retired longer than he worked. And he's in great health and living life to the fullest. So I wanted to retire young, but I knew I wouldn't be able to hit that mark. Of course, I'm 50 now, so I'll never achieve that. But I thought there's got to be a better way for us to, in listening to Dave Ramsey, he has made comments about using a bigger shovel. You got to have a bigger shovel. And so we started thinking, like, what are better ways for us to, and that's the shovel of referring to generating more money and wealth. And we knew that we didn't want to work forever. I just see too many people that work till 65 and a half or later, and now they spend more appointments at the doctor than they do playing pickleball and playing cards and doing things with their friends and family. And we just didn't want that same path. Plus, I also see that inflation has really put people, we were at a point, I remember we were on a vacation, we happened to be with a bunch of people, friends and family, even before that, but last year was another one that reiterated that. And that was that these people were older and they were on a fixed income. Let's say Social Security was paying whatever their projections were for the years that they worked, but they were on this fixed income and they were struggling. And we were talking to them. I said, I don't want to be dependent at all on Social Security. If it's there, great. If it's just a bonus, it's just icing on the cake. I said, I want to be at a place where I can retire by 60. I'm done, or earlier. Really, 55 has been our goal, but I don't know if we'll reach that. I know we're trying, but 60 and out, and have enough passive income that whether Social Security was there or not, I don't care, because we've done the work to prepare for passive income. So anyway,
our freedom goal amount with the software that we put in was $10,000 a month.
Right.
Okay.
That was kind of our target goal.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was listening to a podcast, Dan Miller, 48 Days to the Work You Love. I've listened to him for years, and unfortunately, he just got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I've listened to his last episode, so it's really sad, but great podcast content. 48 Days to the Work You Love. Again, I've recommended it to a lot of people. But Dan was talking about a lady that had a podcast about being responsible with money and so forth. And so I think he had her. No, he just talked about her on her show. So I went to her show. Yes. And you, Chris, were being interviewed on that show. And you were talking about some creative ways to. And so I went back to Tracy. I said, we got to check this Chris guy out. So we went.
Yeah, because this is all a God thing, and in my opinion, because we had just sold our piece.
Right.
We had just sold our piece of property. We were under contract.
The second
one. And it was not our home. So we were going to get taxed on it tremendously. And we had a couple days before we were going to sign the contract. And we were like, we don't even know what we're going to do this money. Going back to being a good steward.
But we did find a couple right next to us here
but that was before we knew of the
Okay.
1031.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had 2 days to think, okay, what are we going to do with this money? I don't know. So he was on this podcast, which led to the other podcast, which led to you. And you go ahead, tell the rest of the story.
We moved forward. So we signed up for Money Ripples and coaching. And in short, we were going to do a 1031 exchange with another 10 acres next to us here. We met with a couple, they're an elderly couple, great people. And they said, yes, we'll do it. And there were 2 little cabins on the property. We're going to turn them into VRBOs. We're like, great, we'll have conjoining property. This will be neat. And at the last minute, we were down to, I think, 14 days before that window was going to close. And they said, yeah, we've decided we're not going to sell.
Oh, no.
Oh. So we're running out of time. And that's when
talk to
Craig from Money Ripples, your partner there at Money Ripples, he's our consultant, is what we call him. And Craig's like, I got an idea for you. And that's where we found out about Eckerd. And so we did a 1031 exchange with Eckerd. And
you did like an oil investment.
Yeah. It worked out really well because, the payouts that they project are only going to go higher. But even right now, if we didn't go any higher than right now, they're better returns than some of our closest friends they're not making these kind of monthly returns on VRBOs, that they have a lot of management and a lot of expenses and just headache with these short-term rentals. And we do nothing, zero. There's no work. And it's so nice to just get that green envelope every month, so. And of course, if it goes up, if the projections go up, it'll be even better. But even right now, we're thankful for it. And of course, we avoided all that tax.
Because you bought land with it.
Right.
And then then we sat down with Craig again and said, okay, what do we do next? Because we want to make sure that we're just keeping that momentum and moving into reaching our freedom goals and being able to finally have him quasi-retire,
But when I'm ready, as long as I'm having fun at my work, I'll keep working. But so that's when we talked about buying a franchise.
So he was like, well, given your goal, owning a business is probably a good idea, but I'm the only one that has the ability at this point to be able to take up that kind of a thing, and I am not a business person. I was like, I can't do that. I can't start a business. I don't even know where I would start. So that's when Craig said, well, have you ever thought about a franchise? And so he introduced us then to Kim Daly, and we started that process. And so in February, we finally found a company that we really clicked with and said, this is the route we want to go. And so we signed our contract, and now we're in the lease stage. So we're very excited about that next step. And then we'll get back a hold of Craig and say, all right, what's next? So it's been an awesome journey.
That's cool. Exciting. You guys are only about almost hitting the 1 year mark right now, aren't you?
I think we got hold of you guys in June.
Exactly. Yep. Man.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's amazing. I mean, and it's kind of nice because I know people are probably used to hearing like, oh, I did this, debt investment or debt fund, or I did, like some real estate properties. You're like, I could have, and that was our original plan, but life took us a different route, but it was perfect. Right. And
it worked out really well. Yeah. We're happy. we're very grateful. And to be debt free, I remember my dad years and years ago was in a group in the factory, and there's about 6 or 8 guys, and they watched, back then it was called, I think it's called CBS or CB. I don't know. It's a Christian news network. I might say the name wrong, but it was called 700 Club at the time.
Oh yeah.
And they would watch this at lunch, and some of the guys were Christian, some weren't, but they would all watch this show together. And Pat Robertson was teaching a course on how much you work per week to just pay interest. And these guys took this calculation, and they all figured out how much they were paying in interest a week, and it just lit them on fire. And so they made this commitment, all of them together, like, we're getting out of debt. Well, I think of the 6 guys, it didn't work out so good because their spouses weren't on the same page. I think one guy ended up in a divorce because he was so adamant and she wasn't, and they parted ways. But in short, I think in 1981, I think it took my dad 3 years to pay off the farm and get debt free. And that was in
Wow.
1981. He said, as soon as you get debt free, it's amazing how you start to accumulate wealth if you just are still, disciplined in your spending, have a budget, and then you can just start compounding all those savings. And that's just continued for 30 plus years. So he's really, so anyway, I say that because I knew the value of getting out of debt, as did Tracy. And so part of this pattern, we went from, $350,000 in debt to, let's say 18 months later, where we're now business owners, property, a couple different property owners. And what's that title? That we're super investors, or what do they call it?
Oh, accredited
investor.
Yeah. We're super investors.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
I like that
was.
better. Accredited sounds so boring.
It does.
So I'm like, what's accredited investor? So we even learned.
We didn't even know. Yeah.
So, it's
I
been
love
good.
that.
Yeah.
Well, what's so cool about that is I don't often mention this because I try to like keep it pretty generic for a lot of people, but I mean, like you guys were like really hoping and praying for an answer, right? Well,
Yes.
a lot of days, I mean, if not every day, it's most days. Like I'm also praying. I'm like, Lord, like help me find the people that I can help and help them find me. Right.
Yeah.
And I even ask, sometimes I'll even ask my team, like do the same thing. Even if you're not a praying person, send it out to the universe, right? Whatever it is.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is that there's so many people just like you that really are like, what do we do? Especially when, your situation, the clock was ticking. I mean, most people, it's not usually like that dire of a need, but I mean, that makes my day,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being interested in our story. We don't really talk about that too much with people. There's, some people that are close to us that know some of those details, but just living life. And it's kind of cool how things unfold when you're willing to take a risk. And they were risk. There were times where, it kept us up at night thinking about, some of the biggest financial decisions we've ever made. But I felt a little bit like, I'm all in. I'm willing to take the risk, and I'm diving in.
Yeah, I remember when he came to me and said, okay, here's some information about this, I don't know, money ripple something, maybe you could look into it. And then I came back.
Because I didn't have time. So busy with my job, I didn't have time.
Yeah, so I looked into it, and I came back to him the next day, and I said, I think we should do this. This sounds amazing. And he was like, we're going to pay how much? To who? For what?
Like, I don't even know.
That Fidelity guy, right? You're like, I paid nothing for that Fidelity guy to get the same advice as the other three guys.
Right. Yeah. So just being able to, but I guess I think it goes back to what you were talking about. And I know you were talking about trying to kind of keep it generic, but it just goes back to the prayers that we're praying and trusting and believing that, okay, we're praying this, and this gentleman came in and it happens to be at the right place at the right time. And we're going to trust that this is the avenue we need to take. And to watch it unfold is awesome.
It has been. Gift. Yeah, it hasn't come without some hiccups along the way, but I do want to add to that, that we're part of a small group, and this has come up in discussion there, because not that our small group has said this, but I just know in Christian circles and even non-Christian circles, people just say things like, well, it was luck, or it was, que sera, sera, whatever will be. You never know what God's going to do, kind of thing. And they just blame their situation or experiences on just the universe, God, other people, instead of just taking ownership and saying, that onus is on me. I made some poor decisions, and I'm responsible to get myself out of that. And I'll look to other people for help. So I think there's a huge element in, yes, I'm very thankful. Yes, we prayed. I'm not diminishing the answers to prayer, but we also took action. And that's the point. We took a lot of action.
Stewards.
And had a lot of discipline and took some risk. Along the way, we got wisdom from money ripples, and we've got a friend that has owned in the 20 or 30 Wendy's restaurants. He's a good friend. In fact, you were at his place today. And we connected with him and said, what's it like to own a franchise? And he kind of gave. So anyway, I say that because we've met with other people, like-minded people, to get counsel, get wisdom, get instruction, and then we take massive action.
For sure. Yeah. We're not just blindly moving forward.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. So thank you for your part.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you actually taking action, because obviously you would have no results if you didn't, right? So
right.
we'd be like, oh, this is a boring conversation. Like 5 minutes, we're done, But it's good that you did something about it, which is amazing. Like I know that more people need to follow your example for sure. If speaking of which, like if you were to give somebody advice, whether it be maybe some of your friends that you've talked to about it, or maybe some of you haven't talked to, because this is like a very different world, a different path that you've taken than the average Joe, right? What advice would you give them?
There's a number of things that come to mind, but I'll let you go first.
I think the first thing that I would say is be willing to go out of the box, because I think the hardest part is to walk away from what you feel like you've always known and what you've always done and what everybody else does. So be willing to step out of that box.
Yeah,
that would be the first thing.
I definitely would agree with that. And even kind of maybe my point is to strengthen that, is to not go along with culture. I find that culture is so influential to all of us, feeling like we've got to do what everybody else is doing. And I almost am attracted to going against the grain. I don't necessarily love the feeling of being different than other people about how we conduct our life, how we raise our kids, how we see the world and live our life. We talk about this a lot. Our diet is weird compared to everybody else. The way we raise kids is weird.
We're just weird.
We're just weird.
Yeah.
You're in the world, but not of the world, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So our lifestyle is not. I mean, we drive an old truck, and we just don't go in debt for stuff, and it's hard. I will be honest. My pride when I see a beautiful jacked up truck going down the road, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what I want right there.
Or a really nice house, knowing that we live in a camper by a barn.
Yeah, we didn't even get into that.
Yeah.
So, but I know that it'll pay off, and it's a good discipline for myself to just keep myself in check, that it's not about, because people fight image all the time. It's about the clothes you wear. It's about the people you're networked with. It's about the likes and the car you drive. You got to just constantly be on this really cool cycle. Otherwise, you don't feel very good about yourself. And we just say, no, we're not going to do that.
And I think that there's a lot of peace that comes with going outside of the box and seeing the results and knowing that we don't have to rely on the government. We don't have to rely on the market. We can now rely on ourselves and the gifts that we've been given and see the results. It's such an encouragement. Yeah. So I think step outside of the box, be willing to take steps to do what you need to get yourself free.
And I'll go back to, I'm not promoting Dave Ramsey, but I have listened to him. And he certainly wouldn't agree with all the things we do,
No.
But there's a lot of things that I learned through the years.
Throw the baby out in the bathwater,
That's right.
right?
That's right. But he used to say, live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later. So I've thought of that often.
Yeah.
See, the best Dave Ramsey quote's been shared on this show yet. Right?
Yeah, he's a good dude. I mean, there's, like she said, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We all have varying opinions on things and how we approach things, but you can learn a lot from people that you don't necessarily agree with on all
things.
Yeah. In all areas of life, not just finances.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I actually watched an interview with him where he kind of calmed down. He got out of his own studio and he was interviewed somewhere else. And it's amazing how he was giving different advice than on his own show. It was really, in fact, he would probably actually be more aligned with what you had just said. Now, granted, being debt free, he would love that, right? But then he was talking about how he did a lot of real estate investments and how he loves that. He didn't really talk much about the stock market, even though that's what he tells everybody else, right? But that's how he made his money, business and real estate. And you guys are literally doing those two things.
Right. Business and real estate. Yeah. 3 buckets: business, real estate, and then the market.
Yeah. And we're excited about what's coming, because I know that even the last time we talked to Craig, and he kind of gave us a look into the future, what are our possible next steps. So we're just excited to keep going and to know that we can be a part of your guys' program so that we don't ever feel lost, because your guys' knowledge, I feel like, is so deep. And I think none of our questions went unanswered. And I think even if when we specifically talked with Craig, if he didn't know the answer, he's like, connect with this person because they are the best and they'll tell you what you need to know. So if he didn't know, he knew who to connect us with. So I'm just so grateful for being able to connect with you guys and what that's going to look like for our future. I'm excited for our Freedom Day.
Yeah.
Amen. We gotta have a party when it happens.
Yeah.
And Chris, I'll just tell you that we have said many times that it was well worth the investment.
Yeah.
Well
we would
worth
do it again.
We would do it again.
Yeah.
We would definitely do it again. The counsel, the connections, the responsiveness.
Yeah. And anybody that asks, we tell them.
Yeah, I told a lot of people about money ripples.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of them took action on it and checked it out, but I've told a number of people about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh,
so there you go.
Yeah.
And for everybody listening, Chris did not ask us to make that plug. He left it totally open. He's like, that's not what it's about. It's just about sharing your stories. So, but we would also be amiss to not give credit to where credit's due. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's what took us down this path. I don't think we would have been where we are today without that. Not this deep in it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, really appreciate that, guys. So well, awesome. Thank you for joining us today. This has been great. I mean, time has been flying. I can't believe it. But I told you this would be like just like hanging out, having lunch, and just like every lunch I have, it's like, oh man, are you serious? But, no, but definitely. Any final parting words you'd offer anybody here? I mean, you've given some great stuff, but anything else you'd like to share?
Go for it. Don't be afraid.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and I have. It's in the back of my mind, and I'm going to write a book someday, and I'll keep this brief because this in itself could go for a long discussion. Mm-hmm. But when I worked as a nurse, over a period of a good number of years, I met with a lot of patients that were nearing the end of their life, and they had health issues. And in my role, I had to do some procedures and so forth, caring for them that was often painful. And so to distract them, I would ask a question and let them just kind of run and think about these questions, kind of get their mind on other things. But I asked them, and I was early 30s, maybe 32 at the time. And I'd say, as a young man, if I were your son or nephew or whatever, how would you counsel me from your life well lived? And the 5 things that they came away with were incredible. And someday I'll put it into the book. But one of those 5 things was, I wish I wouldn't have been afraid to go for my dreams. That was one of the 5 key takeaways. I always had this dream in the back of my mind that I could have been a musician, or that I could have been a business owner, or that I could have developed a new engine, or whatever it was, a big dream that they had, and they just never took the risk. And here they are at the end of their life, and they just said, I wish I would have had the courage to go for my dream, because now I'm too old to pursue it. So hope that helps somebody.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to follow your dreams. I love it.
Yeah.
Great parting advice. Guys, again, Nick, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
No. Again, guys, great advice, great counsel. Again, have the courage to follow your dreams, right? There's nothing worse than get to the end of your life saying, I should have done blank, right? Whether that's spend more time with your family, whether that was trying to do something that was maybe out of the box, just like Tracy had said, right? Whatever it might be willing to have the courage and the faith to follow your dreams. Make sure you make it a wonderful and prosperous week, and we'll see you later.